I'm Nick and this is the Cougar OmnyX. This is a $139 US case that really tries to redefine how a PC case sits on your desk. This, my friends, is a case that can be either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of your desk. What a novel idea. And spoiler alert, this is one of the most interesting cases I've seen for a while and I kind of like it. The Cougar OmnyX is 300 millimeters wide, 520 millimeters high, and around about 470 millimeters deep. This is a dual chamber case, which is why it's got the extra depth. For the front I/O, we have 4 USB Type A ports and 2 USB Type C ports. The interesting thing is you can use either a motherboard header or a cable that plugs directly into your motherboard's I/O, meaning just regular USB ports. As for the side panels, there are removable panels which can be changed with some organic panels that we saw at Computex, and this means you can fully customize each edge of the case with a different material. As for getting the panels off, there's a handy dandy little guide on the included sticker on the side panel, and we're just going to walk through that to show you guys how to get inside because it can be daunting for first time builders. So first of all, you want to remove both the front panel as well as the rear panel. They're magnetic and you can pull those and lift them away from the case. Each of these panels has an edge on them, which makes them very easy to lift up and away from the case. Then what you want to do is remove the TG panel from the front or the main side panel. There's 2 notches on each of the sides of the panels. You can tilt it, you can pop it and lift it away from the case. And then the top panel, you can lift it from the top edge and then you can pull that up and then away from the case. Finally, the rear panel has a little arrow. Basically, put your fingers underneath the edge and then you can pop that and lift that up and away from the case. Optionally, you can remove the front panel, which will then reveal some of the adjustable cable management channels. This is for external cable management. Depending on the orientation, you put this on your desk. And if we do that on the back side, you'll notice it has the same deal. You can adjust the depth on these, you can adjust where they are, and overall a very modular case. I do like this type of cable management system. As for internal wiring, as I mentioned, those front I/O ports can be used with regular old USB Type A and Type C cables that plug directly into the ports on your motherboard. There's also USB Type-C front panel connectors if you want to use that internally with the motherboard headers, a cable for the lights and the switches, front panel audio, and a USB Type-A front panel cable as well. There's an integrated RGB and PWM fan hub. This does not require any software to control it and will work with the reset button on the case, which is actually wired up for the lighting, as well as a motherboard pass-through mode for both PWM and RGB. As mentioned, it is RGB. It requires a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB cable for motherboard pass-through. There's a separate SATA power cable that needs to be plugged in, and then there's also PWM pass-through for controlling the fan speed from your motherboard. The Cougar OmnyX is a little bit different to most other cases, being that the I/O for both your motherboard and graphics card faces downwards. This introduces some issues which I'll cover a little bit later on in the video. As for hard disk and storage support, there is a removable bracket here which will then allow you to install either 2 2.5-inch drives or 2 3.5-inch drives. So the 3.5-inch drives go on the back and the 2.5-inch drives go on the front of this removable bracket. As for motherboard support in the OmnyX, it will support ITX up to ATX motherboards. I think you could probably get away with eATX, but I didn't test that. As well as that, this case also supports back connector motherboards. So ASUS's BTF boards, Gigabyte's Project Zero boards, and MSI's Project Stealth boards. But for this build, I decided not to use any back connector boards, but use this board here. This is the ROG X870E Crosshair Hero, an absolute beast of a motherboard. I also ended up putting on the AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D, 32 gigs of Clev memory, and a brand new Samsung 4TB 9100 Pro. It's one of the fastest drives out there at the moment. Installing the motherboard in this orientation is quite easy because the motherboard then rests on the back edge of the case as well as the I/O shield, meaning that the OmnyX doesn't have centering pegs because it doesn't need them. For power supplies, it has a removable bracket, which I'm a big fan of. It's got a single captive thumb screw. Basically, you mount your power supply to this bracket And then you drop your power supply into the case and fasten up that thumb screw. The maximum supported length for power supplies here is 200 millimeters. While we're on the topic of the power supply as well, there is this removable bracket on the top edge of the case above where your motherboard is, which will help with cable management for non-BTF boards. Essentially, loosen one screw, pop the bracket out of the way, plug in your 24-pin power cable, then put the bracket back in and fasten that screw back up. This is a very elegant way for keeping all of the cables flat so you can fit the liquid cooler in. As for fan support here, this one's pretty interesting. It's got 4 pre-installed 160mm PWM fans that are plugged into that hub. There's fans at the front and the back, and all 4 fans that are included with this case are set to intake mode. Say for instance, you didn't want to use the 2 160mm fans, you can use these included brackets to install either 2 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans on both the front or the back of the case. That will also allow you to install up to 280mm radiators on either the front or the back of the case. This case is essentially symmetrical when it comes to fan mounting. If you're interested in installing a liquid cooler, which is actually the optimal thing for this case, you can install a 360mm radiator at the back of the case here in this location, set to exhaust. So it exhausts out the back of the case. Now, as you're about to see in a moment, you'll probably ask me, why did I orient the tubes that way when I put the pump top on? I wanted to see how much you could stretch the tubes with this cooler. That's the only reason why, and I did it for scientific purposes only. It turns out it's just fine. For graphics card support in the OmnyX, you have 2 options here. You can install your graphics card in the regular orientation, or you can install it in a vertical orientation because the bracket is rotatable, which I did not do in this video. You will need to bring your own riser cable for this. Installing the GPU is very easy. Basically, all of the weight sits on the IO bracket of the card, and then you line it up with the slot and pop it in. As for the maximum length for graphics cards, you're looking at around about 380mm in total length. Cable management in the OmnyX took me maybe 2 to 3 minutes in total, and as you can see here, it is very easy to cable manage here. There are some things I don't plug in typically when we build because it's not required, but yeah, very nice cable management here. And it doesn't really matter because once you put that back panel on, you're not going to see anything anyway. I think the typical orientation for the OmnyX would be you looking at the glass front on rather than a regular case orientation. But again, completely up to you. Building in the OmnyX was very, very easy, and putting all the panels back into place to finish that build is also very easy. But let's take a little bit of a look at some B-roll because you guys like that, but not too long, right? All right, let's take a look at the thermals on the Cougar OmnyX. What you're seeing on your screen right now with the 9800X3D is the thermals are rather quite good. Now this fan configuration is a little bit different considering all of the fans that come with the case are set to intake, meaning both the front and back fans are set to intake. That's because the exhaust is out the top and the back of the case, which is a little bit different to other cases that we've seen. In fact, there is a case from APNX that's coming that's kind of similar to this design. And yeah, stay tuned for that. It's called the V2. We checked that one out at Computex. As for the GPU thermals here, they're also quite good considering you've got 2 of those massive fans blowing air straight into the graphics card. And that's all I've got to say about that in terms of the thermals. As for the parts, if you're interested, there's a PCPartPicker list down below, and there's little things on the screen when we were building it and talking about all of the stuff when we're going through everything. Okay. What's the deal with this case? Well, this is a $139 case that tries to do something different and tries to be very versatile. What I mean by that is, as I mentioned earlier in the video, little things that make sense can be reconfigured, like the side fans. You can change them to basically any size you want with the included brackets. The front I/O can be moved to either the left or the right hand side. You can have the cables coming out of any of the side of the case. It's got built-in external cable management for everything that plugs into the case, and I think that it just does a couple things that I feel should be quite common with a case with this type of design. The main thing is when it comes to the front I/O, I like the fact that you can either use the motherboard headers or just use some USB cables, especially because you can't see the I/O of this case. So why not just give you the option to plug in USB cables for the front? Now, here's one other thing that I think could have been an interesting addition to this case is the fact that that front microphone / headphone jack could have been a USB audio interface, and that could have been passed through one of those USB connections as well. Add that to your Trello board. In terms of the design itself, to be honest, I kind of like it. And the reason is, I like the fact that all the ports are facing down, kind of. I like that you can put this on either side of your desk, but in saying that, the thing I dislike about it the most is also that the ports are facing down. I'll be honest with you, plugging stuff into this case is an absolute pain in the ass. But that's for me. That's a guy who's moving cases around and tearing cases down and testing stuff. It's gonna be a pain in the ass. But when you build it once and you put it on your desk and you plug your things in, you're not really going to have that problem, unless there's one weird wireless dongle thing that you've got that you constantly need to unplug and plug in. Maybe that could be a problem, but yeah, it's absolutely fine. As for the build quality of the case, it's fantastic. The paint job's really good. I like the fact that there's exterior panels that you can change to organic materials like wood and stone, as we talked about at Computex. But overall, I think the Cougar OmnyX is another great case from Cougar. They always have these flagship cases every single year. Last year it was the FV270, and I loved that case, especially with the rotating thing at the front for your figurines and whatnot. And I think this kind of tries to lean more into, believe it or not, a minimal type of aesthetic, because if this didn't have RGB, it'd be absolutely gorgeous. And kind of give you this case that you can place anywhere you like on your desk. And I do hear this complaint a lot from people. However, there are a couple things that they missed out with this case. I think that the bottom I/O is a nice idea, but for me at least, like I said, I don't really dig it, but how this thing looks on the desk is very special. And I think that's what the OmnyX has going for it. It's a very unique looking case with thermals that are quite good, with really nice build quality for only 139 US dollars, or about 199 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. This is not a terrible case. This case is really nice. I like it, and I think you guys are gonna like it too, because it's a fish tank, but it's kind of not a fish tank, and it's got lots of intake, it can go anywhere in your desk. I'm repeating myself, and I'm just gonna, I'm done. You know how I feel. It really is a nice case. I don't hate it. Good work, Cougar. Also good work on making it somewhat affordable. It's not that expensive for what you're getting.